Sergeant Yoon Tae-hyam adjusted his formal uniform and tried not to yawn as he stood guard at the Grand Unity Gala aboard the diplomatic station called Eternal Horizon. The event was beautiful, but incredibly boring for a soldier who preferred action over politics. Thousands of aliens from hundreds of species filled the massive ballroom, their bodies glowing and shimmering in colors that human eyes could barely process. Taehan had been assigned to protect the human diplomatic team, but so far the most dangerous thing he had encountered was a tray of suspicious-looking appetizers. He walked along the edge of the crowd, watching the dancers spin and float across the floor. Some species had wings, others had tentacles, and a few seemed to exist partly in dimensions that made his head hurt when he looked at them too long. "You look terribly bored," a voice said from behind him, and the sound was like music made of moonlight and winter frost. Taehan turned and his breath caught in his throat. Before him stood the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, though he knew immediately that she was not human at all. Her skin was pale like fresh snow, and her eyes held colors that shifted between deep purple and crimson red. Her hair flowed down her back like liquid silver, and when she smiled, he noticed her teeth were just slightly too sharp. "I am Princess Seraphil Vexora of the Noctari Empire," she said, extending a hand that was cold as ice when he took it. "And you are a human, are you not?" "Sergeant Yoon Tae-hyam," he replied, surprised by how steady his voice remained. "Security detail for the human delegation." "How wonderful," Seraphil said, and her eyes seemed to drink in every detail of his face. "I have heard so much about your species, but have never had the pleasure of meeting one in person." She circled him slowly, her gaze intense and curious. Taehan felt like prey being examined by a predator, but something about her also seemed genuinely fascinated. "You are so warm," she whispered, standing close enough that he could feel the chill radiating from her body. "I can feel your heat from here. Your blood pumps so strongly through your veins." "That is a strange thing to notice," Taehyam laughed nervously. "Most people comment on my height or my accent." "I am not most people," Sci-Fi with a smile that made his heart race. "Tell me, Sergeant, do all humans burn so brightly, or is it just you?" They talked for hours as the gala continued around them. Seraphil asked endless questions about Earth, about human bodies, about their emotions and their dreams. She wanted to know why humans sweated, why their faces turned red when embarrassed, why their hearts beat faster when they were excited. Every answer seemed to delight and confuse her. "Your species is so alive," she said with wonder in her voice. "Everything about you pulses with energy and heat and feeling." "And your species?" Taehyam asked. "What are the Noctari like?" A shadow passed over her beautiful face. "We are cold," she said simply. "We've always been cold." As the night grew late, Seraphil took his hand and led him to an observation deck where the stars blazed against the black void of space. They stood together in silence, watching distant suns burn. "I should not be here with you," she whispered. "I should not be feeling what I'm feeling." "What are you feeling?" Taehyam asked. She turned to face him, her crimson eyes glowing softly in the starlight. "I do not know," she admitted. "That is what frightens me." Before he could respond, she kissed him. Her lips were cold as winter, but somehow that coldness felt right against the warmth of his mouth. For a moment, the universe seemed to stop. Then Seraphil pulled back with a gasp, her eyes flashing bright red. "You taste different," she whispered, touching her lips with trembling fingers. "You taste like fire and sunlight and something I cannot name." Then she was gone, vanishing into the shadows like smoke on the wind. Taehyam stood alone on the observation deck, his heart pounding and his mind spinning with confusion. He touched his own lips, still cold from her kiss, and wondered what had just happened. The princess had looked almost afraid, but also hungry in a way that made him shiver. "That was a dangerous game you just played," a voice said, and Taehan spun to find an elderly alien watching him with grave concern. The creature was small and wrinkled, with 6 eyes that blinked in sequence. "I am Ambassador Korath of the Valundi Council," he said, "and I must warn you about what you have done." "What do you mean?" Taehan demanded. "It was just a kiss." "With a Noctari?" The ambassador laughed bitterly. "Do you know what the Noctari truly are, young human? Do you know what they do to their prey?" The word prey made Taehan's blood run cold. "Prey," he repeated. "They are parasites," Korath explained, his voice heavy with ancient fear. "They feed on life itself through blood and touch. Their victims become empty shells, drained of everything that made them alive." "And the princess?" Taehan asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Princess Seraphil Vexora is called the Crimson Heir," the ambassador said. "She has killed over 10,000 beings across 3 galaxies. She is considered the deadliest predator our universe has ever known." Taehan looked back at the shadows where Seraphil had disappeared, and for the first time, he felt true fear crawling up his spine. He had kissed a monster, and somehow that monster had tasted like loneliness and sorrow. "Why did she run?" he asked. "If she is so deadly, why did she not kill me?" The ambassador shook his head slowly. "That, young human, is the question that may determine whether you live or die." The alarms began screaming just after midnight. Red lights flashed throughout the station as panicked voices announced that hostile ships had arrived. Taehan grabbed his weapons and ran toward the diplomatic quarters, but Seraphil caught his arm. "They are already inside," she said, her crimson eyes darting through the shadows. "I can feel them, at least 12 hunters." "Then, we need to evacuate the diplomats now," Taehan declared. They ran together through corridors that had become hunting grounds. Screams echoed from every direction as the Noctari began feeding on anyone they found. Taehan watched in horror as they passed bodies that still breathed but stared at nothing. The victims were not dead, but everything that made them who they were had been drained away. "Keep moving," Seraphil urged. "We cannot help them." They found the human diplomats barricaded in their quarters, defended by a handful of security officers. Taehan quickly organized an evacuation toward the emergency shuttles. But the Noctari were everywhere, moving through shadows like ghosts. Whenever the group tried to advance, pale figures with glowing red eyes would appear to block their path. "I will draw them away," Seraphil said. "Get your people to the shuttles." "No," Taehan refused. "We stay together." Before they could argue further, a cold laugh echoed through the corridor. A figure stepped out of the darkness, and Seraphil went pale with fear. "Lord Malachar," she whispered. The ancient Noctari was tall and thin, with skin like gray parchment and eyes that held no light at all. He looked at Seraphil with contempt dripping from every word. "The Crimson Heir, reduced to protecting cattle," he sneered. "Your father was right to call you a disappointment." "Let these people go," Seraphil demanded. "Your quarrel is with me." "My quarrel is with the contamination you have allowed into your mind," Malachar replied. "Human feelings, human weakness, you disgust me." He gestured, and a dozen hunters emerged from the shadows around them. The human security officers raised their weapons, but they were clearly outmatched. "Kill the humans," Malachar ordered. "Bring the traitor. Princess to me alive." The hunters attacked with terrifying speed. But Taehan was ready. He had been fighting since he was 18, and he knew that sometimes the only way to win was to fight dirty. He grabbed a fire extinguisher and sprayed it directly into the face of the nearest hunter. While the creature recoiled in surprise, he smashed the canister into its skull. "Aim for the eyes," he shouted to the other security officers. "They heal fast, but they still need to see." The corridor became chaos as humans and Noctari clashed. Taehyun used every trick he knew, fighting, with elbows and knees and improvised weapons. He grabbed cables from the wall and used them to strangle. He shattered light panels to create blinding flashes. He even set off the fire suppression system to fill the corridor with foam. The Noctari were faster and stronger, but the humans refused to stop fighting. Every time one soldier fell, another stepped up to take their place. Seraphel fought beside them, but she was growing weaker with every passing moment. Without feeding, her strength was fading. "You cannot win." Malachar laughed as he watched the battle. "You are fighting the inevitable, little princess. Your human pets will die, and you will watch before I drag you back to your father." 3 hunters grabbed Seraphel at once, forcing her to her knees. She was too weak to resist. Taehyun saw her fall and something inside him snapped. He fought through the chaos like a man possessed, taking wounds that should have stopped him, but somehow kept moving. He reached Seraphel and stood over her fallen body, facing Lord Malachar with nothing but a broken piece of metal in his hand. "Get away from her," he growled. Malachar looked at him with amusement. "A human, threatening me? How adorable." "She is not yours anymore," Taehyun declared. "She made her choice, and she chose to be free." "She chose to be weak," Malachar corrected. "And weakness must be purged." Seraphel looked up at Taehyun with desperation in her eyes. "You have to run," she begged. "Please, I cannot watch you die." "I am not leaving you," Taehyun said firmly. "Touching," Malachar said coldly. "Now die together." He lunged forward, his claws aimed at Taehyun's throat. There was no way a human could dodge an ancient Noctari strike, but Taehyun did not try to dodge. Instead, he sliced his own palm with his broken weapon and thrust his bleeding hand directly into Malachar's face. The ancient vampire screamed as human blood burned his skin like acid. He recoiled, clutching at his melting face. "Human blood is toxic to you," Taehyun shouted. "You should have done your research." Then he turned to Seraphel and pressed his bleeding hand to her lips. "Take it," he said. "Take my blood. It will kill you." She protested. "No," he replied. "You did not kill me before. Trust yourself. Trust me." Seraphel hesitated for only a moment before she drank. Human blood flowed into her, burning like fire but also filling her with incredible warmth. She felt Taehyun's emotions flood through her as courage, his stubbornness, his absolute refusal to give up. She felt his hope and his faith in her, his belief that she could be something better. Golden light exploded from her body, and Seraphel rose with power she had never known. She was burning with human warmth made manifest, glowing like a star in the darkness. Malachar stared at her in terror. "What have you become?" he demanded. "Something new," Seraphel replied, and her voice echoed with power. "Something you will never understand." Taehyun spent the next 3 days buried in research, reading everything he could find about the Noctari Empire. The more he learned, the more horrified he became. The Noctari were ancient beyond measure, a species that had existed before most stars in the galaxy had even formed. They did not eat food or drink water. They survived entirely by draining the life force of other beings through blood contact. Their victims did not simply die. They became hollow, empty things that could not think or feel or dream anymore. The Noctari left behind shells that breathed but were no longer truly alive. Entire civilizations had fallen to Noctari hunger. Species that once numbered in the billions had been reduced to scattered survivors hiding in the darkest corners of space. And Princess Seraphel was the worst of them all. The records called her the Crimson Heir, the Emperor's own daughter and personal executioner. She had fed on diplomats and soldiers and innocents. She had drained kings and queens and children without mercy. Her kill count was not just high, it was legendary. Why did she not kill me? Taehyun whispered to himself as he stared at her image on his data screen. Those beautiful crimson eyes haunted him even in his nightmares. He found himself touching his lips again, remembering the cold kiss and the strange look of fear on her face. Something had happened when their mouths touched, something that had scared even the deadliest predator in 3 galaxies. On the 4th night, Taehyun was walking through an empty corridor when he felt the temperature drop. He turned slowly, already knowing who he would find. Seraphil stood in the shadows, her pale skin glowing faintly in the dim light. She looked different, somehow weaker, hungrier, more desperate. "You have been researching me?" she said, and her voice trembled slightly. "You know what I am now." "I know what you have done," Taehyun replied, and he was surprised that his voice stayed calm. "I know how many people you have killed." "Then why are you not running?" she demanded, stepping closer. "Why are you not screaming for help?" "Because you did not kill me when you had the chance," he said. "And I want to know why." Seraphil stared at him with those impossible eyes, and for a moment she looked almost human in her confusion. "I do not know," she admitted. "When I kissed you, I tried to feed it is what I do, what I have always done. But something went wrong," Taehyun guessed. "Wrong?" She laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "You burn me from the inside, human. Your blood is like liquid fire to my kind." She held up her hand, and Taehyun saw faint scars across her palm. "I have healed from wounds that would kill any other being, but these marks from touching you remain." "Human blood is toxic to you?" he asked. "Not just toxic," Seraphil said, shaking her head. "When I touched you, when I tried to feed, something impossible happened. Instead of draining your life force, I felt your emotions flood into me." Her voice broke on the last words. "For the first time in 800 years, I felt warmth. I felt compassion and hope and joy, feelings that died inside me centuries ago." Taehyun watched as tears that looked like liquid starlight rolled down her pale cheeks. The deadliest predator in the galaxy was crying in front of him. "It hurt," she whispered. "It hurt so much to feel again." Any sane person would have used this moment to escape. Any smart soldier would have called for backup and had the monster captured. But Taehyun was human, and humans had never been very good at doing the sensible thing. "Did it hurt?" he asked softly, stepping toward her instead of away. "Being alone for that long?" Seraphil looked up at him with shock written across her beautiful face. No one had ever asked about her pain before. She was a weapon, a monster, a thing to be feared. "You should hate me," she said. "I have killed so many. I came to this gala specifically to kill your people. But you did not kill me," Taehyun pointed out. "Even though you tried." "I cannot feed on you," she admitted. "And now I cannot stop thinking about you. Your warmth haunts me like a ghost I cannot escape." Taehyun reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not move, he took her cold hand in his warm one. She gasped at the contact, and he saw a golden light flicker beneath her pale skin. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "Yes," she breathed. "But it is a good pain, like frozen muscles finally thawing after centuries of winter." They stood together in that empty corridor, the predator and her impossible prey. Taehyun knew he should be afraid, knew that everything logical said this woman was his enemy. But when he looked in her eyes, he did not see a monster. He saw someone who had been alone and cold and hungry for longer than human civilization had existed. "Tell me about yourself," he said. "Not the crimson air, not the princess. Tell me about Seraphil." She stared at him as if he had spoken in a language she could not understand. "No one has ever asked me that before," she whispered. "Then I will be the first." Taehyun smiled. "We humans are good at being first." For the first time since she had kissed him, Seraphil smiled back, and this smile held no hunger, no predation, no death. It was simply the smile of a lonely woman who had finally found someone willing to see her as more than a monster. Over the following days, Taehyun and Seraphil met in secret. They would find empty rooms and quiet corners where they could talk without being seen. She told him things she had never told anyone. She spoke of her childhood, of being born into a family that saw love as weakness and hunger as the only truth. "I was changed when I was very young," she explained, her voice distant with memory. "My father, the Emperor, decided I would be his greatest weapon. He fed me the blood of 1,000 warriors to make me strong." "You were just a child," Taehyun said, horror thick in his voice. "Children are nothing in the Noctari Empire," Seraphil replied. "We are tools to be shaped, weapons to be forged. I do not even remember what it felt like to be innocent." She had been trained to kill from the moment she could walk. She had made her first kill at an age when human children were still learning to read. "Every life I took made me colder," she continued. "Every feeding pushed the real Seraphil deeper into darkness until I forgot she ever existed." "But she is still there," Taehyun said firmly. "I can see her when you smile. I can hear her when you laugh." Seraphil looked at him with wonder in her crimson eyes. "How do you do that?" she asked. "How do you see good in someone who has done so much evil?" "Because I believe in second chances," he replied. "I have done things I regret too, not like you, but I have made choices that haunt me." He told her about his time as a soldier, about missions that went wrong and comrades who died because of his mistakes. He spoke of the guilt he carried and the nightmares that still woke him. "Humans are strange," Seraphil said when he finished. "You feel so much guilt for so few deaths, while I feel nothing for thousands." "You felt something when you kissed me," Taehyun reminded her. "You felt warmth and hope. That means you can still feel." "Perhaps," she admitted. "But what good is feeling when I cannot change what I am?" Before Taehyun could answer, Seraphil suddenly went rigid. Her eyes flashed bright red and her face twisted with fear. "He is calling me," she whispered. "My father, the Emperor." She pulled a small crystal from her sleeve, and a holographic image flickered to life. The face that appeared was ancient and terrible, with eyes like black holes and skin stretched tight over sharp bones. "Daughter," the Emperor's voice echoed with cold command. "You have delayed your mission long enough. The human diplomats were supposed to be dead 3 days ago." "Father, Seraphil began. "Silence," the Emperor snapped. "I have received reports that you have been spending time with one of the humans. This is unacceptable." "The mission has complications," Seraphil said, but her voice shook. "Human physiology is different than we expected." "I do not care about complications," the Emperor replied. "Complete your mission or return home to face execution as a traitor. You have until tomorrow." The hologram vanished, leaving Seraphil trembling in the darkness. Taehyun reached for her, but she pulled away. "You need to go," she said urgently. "You need to take your diplomats and leave this station immediately." "I am not leaving without you," Taehyun declared. "Did you not hear him?" Seraphil demanded. "I was sent here to kill your people. I am an assassin, a monster. Everything we have shared changes nothing." "It changes everything," Taehyun insisted. "You have a choice now, Seraphil. You can be what your father made you, or you can be something new." "There is no something new for me," she cried. "I am 800 years old. I have killed more beings than you can count. There is no redemption for what I have done." Taehyun grabbed her cold hands and held them tight. "On Earth, we have a saying, it is never too late to change. I do not care what you were. I care about what you choose to be now." "He will send others," Seraphil warned. "When I fail my mission, he will send Noctari hunters to kill us both. Then we will face them together," Taehyun said. "You are insane," she whispered. "You would risk your life for someone like me?" I would risk my life for someone who deserves a chance at something better, he corrected. And you do deserve that chance, Seraphil, even if you do not believe it yet. She stared at him for a long moment, and he watched the battle playing out behind her eyes. Centuries of conditioning fought against the new feelings his warmth had awakened. Finally, she let out a breath she did not need and squeezed his hands. "If I help you," she said slowly, "there is no going back. I will be a traitor to my empire, hunted until the end of time." "You will also be free," Taihan replied. "Free to choose your own path, free to feel warmth and hope again." A small smile crossed her pale lips. "Freedom." She repeated the word like she was tasting something new. "I do not think I have ever truly been free." "Then let me show you what it feels like," Taihan offered. Outside the station, sensors began detecting multiple ships emerging from hyperspace. The Noctari hunters were already on their way. Seraphil moved like lightning wrapped in golden fire. She struck Malachar with a blow that sent the ancient vampire crashing through 3 walls. The other Noctari hunters stared in disbelief at what their princess had become. Her skin glowed with inner warmth, her eyes blazed with golden light, and her presence radiated power unlike anything their species had ever possessed. "This is impossible," one of the hunters whispered. "She is burning like a star." Malachar pulled himself from the rubble, his face twisted with rage and fear. "What did the human do to you?" he demanded. "He showed me what I could be," Seraphil replied. "It gave me something our kind has never known, hope." She attacked again, moving faster than any Noctari had ever moved. Malachar tried to block her strikes, but every blow burned him with golden fire. "You are an abomination," he screamed as he fell back. "Our kind feeds on life. We do not share it." "Then, perhaps our kind was wrong," Seraphil said. Their battle shook the station as 2 ancient powers clashed. Taihan pulled the wounded humans to safety while the vampires fought with speed and fury beyond mortal comprehension. Malachar was old and experienced, but Seraphil burned with something he could not match. Human emotion gave her strength that centuries of feeding had never provided. Finally, she caught him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Her golden hand burned his flesh as she held him helpless. "Finish it." Malachar spat. "Kill me as you have killed thousands before. Prove that you are still the Crimson Heir." Seraphil raised her other hand, claws gleaming with deadly light. One strike would end the ancient vampire forever. But then she looked at Taihan, and she remembered what he had taught her. She remembered his words about second chances and redemption. "No," she said, lowering her hand. "I am not the Crimson Heir anymore." She threw Malachar to the ground and stepped back. The ancient vampire stared at her in confusion. "Why?" he demanded. "I would have killed you without hesitation." "That is the difference between what I was and what I am becoming," Seraphil replied. "The human taught me that mercy takes more strength than murder." She turned to the other hunters, who cowered before her golden radiance. "Go," she commanded. "Return to my father and tell him what you saw. Tell him that his daughter is dead, and something new has taken her place." The hunters fled, dragging the wounded Malachar with them. Within minutes, their ships were retreating into hyperspace. Taihan leant towards Seraphil, holding his injured arm. "You let them go," he said, surprise in his voice. "You taught me that mercy is not weakness," she replied. "It was the hardest thing I have ever done." The golden light faded from her skin, but warmth remained in her eyes. She looked at her hands with wonder, amazed at what she had become. "What am I now?" she asked. "I am not human, but I am no longer truly Noctari either. You are something the galaxy has never seen before," Taihan smiled. "A vampire who chose to stop being a monster." The aftermath brought chaos to the political landscape. The Noctari Empire declared Seraphil a traitor and enemy of the state, with the largest bounty in history placed on her head. But something unexpected happened in the following weeks. Young Noctari, across the Empire, began seeking out humans, curious about the transformation they had heard rumors of. Scientists theorized that human emotional intensity created a symbiotic bond rather than a parasitic drain. Instead of taking life, the connection shared it. "Your species might be the key to changing mine," Seraphil said as she read the reports. "Centuries of hunger and killing could end because of human warmth." "That is a lot of pressure to put on one kiss," Tehian joked. The human government offered Seraphil asylum, and she accepted. She had nowhere else to go, and honestly, she had no desire to be anywhere that Tehian was not. They stood together on the observation deck where they had first kissed, watching a distant star rise over the curve of the station. The light that had once burned her now felt gentle against her skin. "I never thought I would see a sunrise without pain," she whispered. "How does it feel?" Tehian asked. "Like waking up after a nightmare that lasted 800 years, she replied. "Like finally being allowed to hope for something better." She turned to face him, her crimson eyes now flecked with gold. "You kissed a monster," she said. "You kissed the deadliest predator in 3 galaxies, and instead of running, you offered her your blood." "You were never just a monster to me," Tehian replied. "I saw the person underneath, the one who had been buried under centuries of pain." "You are insane," Seraphil laughed. "You humans are absolutely insane." "We prefer the term stubborn," he grinned. She kissed him then, not to feed, but simply because she wanted to. Her lips were still cool, but warmth bloomed between them like a promise. "What happens now?" she asked when they parted. "Now we see what kind of future a human and a reformed vampire can build together," Tehian replied. "And we show the galaxy that monsters can become something better." "You make it sound so simple," Seraphil said. "It is simple," he insisted. "Not easy, but simple. You just have to keep choosing hope over hunger, love over loneliness." She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for the first time in 8 centuries, she felt truly at peace. The cold that had defined her existence was finally fading. "You know what the strangest part is?" she murmured. "What?" "When I kissed you that first night, I thought I was hunting you. I thought you were my prey." Tehian laughed and wrapped his arm around her. "That is the thing about humans," he said. "We are too stubborn to let anyone stay a monster, even when that monster is trying to eat us." Seraphil smiled and watched the sunrise paint the stars with gold. She had been the galaxy's deadliest vampire, but one human man had seen something worth saving beneath the monster. And that stubborn, impossible, wonderfully insane human had kissed her anyway. That kiss had changed everything, not just for her, but perhaps for 2 species forever. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Tehian asked. "For making me want to be something better." He smiled and pulled her closer. "That is what we do," he said. "We are humans being stubborn and hopeful is kind of our thing." Together, they watched the dawn break across the infinite dark of space. The vampire princess and her impossible human, proof that even the coldest heart could learn to feel warmth again.